Ta-da! We're back. No more music, man. Hey, everybody, how you doing? This is Jeff, Junior Hockey Live. It's Wednesday, time to talk junior hockey. We're going to discuss teams, coaches, players, leagues, anything dealing with the junior sport across the board. I'm Jeff Colson. On the other side, I'll bring him on right now, is Mike Bloomer. There you are. Holy
I'm here.
smokes. You are. Did you go flying on an airplane and get your little airplane badge? Is that what you got on your shirt?
Chicago Jets.
It looks like one of those little badges you got when you flew Delta when you were like 6.
Yep, I was in the Catch Me If You Can, the Pan Am girls, that were cruising around.
At 6?
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Okay. All right, let's get it over with. Go ahead. Tell me how bad my picks were. What league you want to start with?
You know what? Not as bad as the last round. So when it comes to
5-3 in the last round, and so I did better this time?
Well, yeah, you did. You were
I was
100%.
5-3 with an asterisk. Keep that in mind.
With an asterisk, you're right.
Okay. Where are we sitting on the pick? What league are you starting with?
Let's go USHL. USHL, we had the first matchup, Lincoln Stars versus Fargo Force. Fargo ended up taking that one 3-1 in the series. We both had Fargo, so no surprise there. And then the next matchup, Youngstown versus Chicago Steel. So that one also went 3-2, but Youngstown ended up bumping off the Chicago Steel. So that's a little bit of an upset, but you had picked that, so I'll give you credit where credit is due. I was 1-1. You were 2-0.
Okay, now see, statistics, as long as you got to let data actually build. And the more data that builds, the more you get to true numbers, okay? So now that we're into this second round, the data is starting to build. Overall, we got one other league to go yet, don't we? You going to do the null too?
Yeah, we can do the null. So the null, they're still playing, so no one's advanced from the last time.
True. Yeah, we'll wait on that one. So overall, what's the records between the two of us now?
I am 8-2, and you are 7-3.
I just got to let the data catch up to me.
Still losing, baby.
Yeah. See, I know why you're all, you're feeling your oats. The NHL had their little silly. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. How they get their number one draft pick thing. I don't know who invented it or why they think it's special. Yeah, doesn't the NBA do it too? Where they
very very similar.
Yeah, every team it's weighted on who's the worst team. They get the most chances. Then it works down the list. And everybody knows that Detroit should have been the person or the team to claim that number one draft pick, and it's rigged. It's about like the 8th time in a row that Detroit has not received. And what's upsetting to me talking to you right now is you're a Detroit fan, but you're giddy that Chicago got the overall pick.
Not at all. I'm not giddy at all. I think it is rigged. But I also did not think or thought the Detroit Red Wings were going to get that pick with a 5% chance. There was no way. But in years past, yes, when they were, at the very bottom of the standings and still got the 4th overall pick instead of the 1st,
that happened a few times to them.
Every time.
Yeah, that's true.
Every time. Every single time. If you actually look in the last 7 years, the Red Wings have had the worst record collectively in the 7 years. And their average draft position was 6.9. So basically the 7th overall pick, but had the worst record in the last 7 years. So, they've pretty much either moved back in every draft or drafted directly in their slot. So,
they did everything in their power to bring Detroit down. Detroit was such a powerhouse, just an unbelievable powerhouse. And it's taken them, 10 years to, humble them and bring them down. But the whole league, collectively, it's like one of those things where it's, you've got the secret societies all over the place. The NHL has secret people that are just in it to just dismantle the Detroit Red Wings. And they've done, well, the last few years they've done a good job, but now Stevie Wise, he's doing a good job. He'll have him back on the right track.
Yeah, I'll say thankfully we have Steve Eiserman, because in some of the last drafts when we've had a worse position, we still have had the best player come out of that draft with Mo Sider and Lucas Raymond and some players like that. But I don't think of it more of the NHL as against Detroit as much as I think as the NHL, when there's a superstar type player, they are going to do everything they can to make sure that that player is in a great market, because it's going to make them millions of dollars. It would almost be stupid if they didn't.
It's
but
rigged. It's rigged. That's all you got to say. It's rigged.
It is. I mean, you got Austin Matthews in Toronto. He was like the next best thing. Of course he's going to Toronto. Then you got McDavid. It's not like in those years when Carolina and Florida and Arizona and Columbus and all of these other programs are also very bad. Of course they're not going to win the lottery and have a player like that. If it's like a Nico Hischier or an Ekblad or like a year where the draft isn't great, maybe they'll give those teams a sniff. But when there's a premier player, there is no chance that guy is going to Columbus or Arizona or somewhere else. So
how are we going to tie this conversation into junior hockey, or do we have to move on?
It's the same in the USHL draft. No, I'm only kidding.
That would have been a great conversation to try to explain to people, how in the world did you guys come up with that conclusion?
No, not even close.
That would be all on you. That's all I got to say.
No.
I would just plain blame you. Make it very clear I had nothing to do with it. Okay, so the theme of tonight is recovery and recovering. And I left it open, man, because I need a lot of time to recover from this last season. I know I don't know what was worse. See, you got married last year in the midstream, and that you were coaching 2 teams. You're doing your job in the North American Hockey League, and you're doing a regular 9-to-5 job, and you're getting married. That was probably your worst year, as far as just bit off more you could chew as far as coaching and scouting and everything else.
Yeah, that was tough. That year was definitely tough. But I also think, thankfully, when it comes to the scouting and the North American League stuff, thankfully our program brought you on board, because you definitely took on a large part of what I used to be able to do and wasn't quite able to do because I was spread so thin. So from a program standpoint, we didn't miss a beat. From my standpoint, that was a tough year for sure.
Right. Well, I appreciate the kind words, but you clearly made up for it with me this year, because for multiple reasons, this was not my year to be playing on all 8 cylinders. And so it's yin and yang. You go back and forth, and that's what makes a team, though, right?
Exactly. That's why we're a team. So it works out well. But to your point, it's a long season, especially when you're coaching teams, because you're not only going through the grind of practices and games and showcases and, trying to get the most out of your players, and you're kind of living and dying with every win and loss and all of that stuff. But then, as a coach, you're also trying to help get your players to higher levels and get them connected with junior teams. And, a lot of times that isn't an easy process, and there's a lot of back and forth and, things that happen where it's just endless. It's just endless communication and stress and pressure and things like that. And then you go to the scouting side, and there's typical like points in every year where things really ramp up. And, obviously when tenders first get released in the North American League, that's a time where there's a lot more communication with players and feeling them out and them feeling you out. And then, getting some tenders signed and back and kind of square away part of your year there. And then once the seasons start ending and, the Canadian Junior League start ending and, you're trying to secure, the last of your tenders, you're trying to fill your different main camps and pre-draft camps, and you're trying to get a list together of the kids you're going to draft, and there's just so much stuff that people don't necessarily realize is constantly happening. And for me personally, I think probably this week alone I would say, without overestimating, I've probably watched 100 players online. And
Yeah, you've been knocking it out of the park this week. You definitely
yeah,
been
my
knocking it.
eyes are honestly like, I feel like I could literally like cry because they're so dry from watching these screens for so long. But it's fun, to be able to do that. It's what we love doing. It's just we're at the process now where it's a lot, and like I said, there's kind of peaks of when things really start heating up, and we're kind of in that stretch between now and when the NA draft is, of really finalizing our lists and checking them twice, of communicating with the other team's coaches and their parents and them
Yep,
personally and their advisors, and the list goes on.
it does. It is arduous, and you know, technically, this is one of the busier times to be on the recruiting and scouting side of junior hockey. Everybody thinks the playoffs. Well, yeah, the playoffs are important. That's going, but you got to keep your team alive. You got to survive, for the next year and the year after. So the busier you are now, the easier it is. You got to hit a couple. I don't say home runs. You got to get some good base hits in the draft. You hope that you get a couple triples, doubles, and triples in the with your picks as far as what you signed for the team, uh,
Yep.
and then you hope that the players that are coming back are going to be guys that hit triples too. So between the tenders, between the draft, between returning players, and then once again maybe a few good singles coming out of kids that walk on to a camp or last minute invite to a camp. And then the last piece being anything that trickles down after everything gets rolling. So yeah, it's a tough time of year to put things together for us. um, I want to stay on that subject, but there's some people out there. First of all, if you got a question, if you got a comment, throw it on board. I've got all three screens up right now, looking to see if any comments or questions are coming in. Which normally we have quite a few. Tonight we don't seem to have that many, but we have one, and it actually came off the discussion group in the discussion board, the Junior Hockey Advisor discussion page, which is, guess what? We're pushing almost 9,000 now. It just seems like we
Wow.
were at 7,000 a few weeks ago, and now we this week we should push over 9,000. So that's a milestone, getting close to that 10,000 mark. So,
That's
um,
great.
the question is, and this comes from Melinda. My son has a few NAL camps, NAHL main camp invites. Should we wait until after the draft before registering for any main camp? Ooh, good question. Very simple answer. You want to take it, Mike, or you want me to take it?
Well, I think it depends on like what age your player is and where they're coming from. Because if you're a younger kid and you're more going to that camp, like obviously everyone wants to try to make the team, but in some cases you're going to a camp like that because you want the experience and to see how far you are, or I should say, close you are to being able to make the team. But really, your goal is to maybe go back and play midget another year or prep school, or maybe if you're playing junior somewhere to go back there, if you're like an '06 or an '05 even sometimes, then you might not have a chance of getting drafted based on your age. So to think you have to wait for that before going or signing up for it is a little
Yeah.
bit different. If
I'm going to
you're
take a different stance on that. I'm going to take a different approach to this. I'm going to assume that they're of age because that'll help everybody in the audience. Um, Look, if you're going to wait for the draft and then sign up, what's the positives and the negatives once the draft happens? If you are drafted, you can only go to one.
right,
It's very simple. Whatever team drafted you, that's the main camp you're going to. Period. If you don't get drafted, you can go to the other camps. The downside to this though is if you sign up for two other camps and you get drafted by a third team, good luck trying to get that money back from those two teams. Now, some teams do it; they just go, "Yep, no problem at all," and other teams go, "Hey, look, that's a chance you took," and you don't see the money back. I don't know if there's an official rule on that. I just know that some teams are a little slow, pulling that dollar back out of the pocket once you paid it, and that's the real world. Doesn't matter which league we're talking about here. That's across the board. Once you sign up for a camp, if injury, that's different. Usually camps are very good on injuries. You send them a doctor a note, a hospital note, and they're pretty good at that. But if you just go, hey, look, I signed up for another camp, but I got drafted over here. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, what's your stance on it? Is it something that you say sign up for the camps or wait until after the
I just
camp?
told you what the facts are, man.
You went on both sides of that question.
I told you what the facts were. I didn't tell you I was going to tell you what to do.
Well,
Uh,
you told the audience that you're taking a different stance from what
I
I
took a
said, and then
different
you took
stance on
both
it because you were
stances.
saying, well, if you're young, blah 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 blah. I was
Yeah,
saying, if you get drafted, you don't have to worry about the choice. The choice is made for you. Okay,
correct.
if you don't get drafted, then you can. The insurance policy to me, this looks like an insurance policy. We want to go to a few camps, but should we wait until after the draft so we can make sure we pick the right camps, or see if we get drafted? Hey, if you get drafted, you only got one camp to go to. So I really don't have a stance on it except for I just took a different angle.
Yeah,
Angle.
my
Angle.
stance is if you are a player that is a legitimate option to make a team, like you're of that age, you're from that, whether it's another junior team or junior league that promotes players into whatever, if it's the NA going to the USHL or a Canadian Junior League or an NCDC going to the NA. If you do your homework and you find out which of the different teams you've had a good relationship with or connection with, and they have a lot of their players that are advancing into college, that's a good main camp to sign up for, regardless of if that team drafts you or not. Because the
Yeah,
reality is, if the
yeah.
draft is the
Your
beginning
advice
of
is great.
June,
Yeah, I don't have any issue with the advice. Just know that if you get drafted, you don't have to worry about it. Your choice to
right.
pick what
But
camp you go to.
what I'm trying to get out is if you're waiting until the draft, and the draft, let's say for the NA, is June 14th, a lot of the main camps are going to start in July. So there's not a whole lot of time to do your homework and to research and to try to get into a different main camp when they might be 3 weeks later or four
Yep.
weeks later or whatever else. So you might
Yep.
as well do your homework now. And then if you get drafted, to your point, cancel from the other camps you signed up for and then do the camp for the team that drafted you.
Yeah. So there's no issues there. While we're on the subject of main camps and the whole process behind main camps and what happens when does it, let's not forget, and this is across the board, USHL, this is the NOL. When you go to a main camp, the draft gets you to the main camp. Okay, there is absolutely no promise that you're going to be on that roster. A tender technically gets you to the main camp. And so, in some respects, what it does though is you're favored. You're locked in with a team with a tender or a draft. I mean, you don't have a choice to go anywhere else until they release you. But as far as making that roster, the only advantage you have is that the coaching staff has favored you. They like you. They've researched you. They've talked to you through the drafting process or through the tendering process, and they've got a much better handle than a player just coming into camp that is coming in cold. Okay, somebody that signs up online or gets an invite, but doesn't really have the same amount of the depth of research by the staff. So the staff will identify with you ahead of time. However, you've seen it, Mike. I've seen it. Between the two of us, we've probably seen it hundreds of times. Draft picks don't always make the team.
Right.
Tenders don't always make the team. But always there's somebody that wasn't drafted or tendered or a veteran player that will make the team. So the door is really open when you get to main camp. It could be a positive if you're on the side that didn't get drafted or didn't get tendered. You still have a shot. Teams will take the best talent. However, don't sit on it and think, "Oh, I was drafted." We had a player last year in Dallas, that fell in that category. Came in thinking, "I'm drafted." And I don't know how many times people on the staff went down and put a boot in his butt trying to get him to skate, intensely and harder because they wanted to see him do well. But once, some kids, and this happens at the USHL level too, you get drafted in the USHL and you think, I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to be playing the USHL. Well, we've got videos out there. You can go to the Junior Hockey Advisor website and pull up where are these players now in the USHL. We've got videos talking about players that were drafted and where they all spread out to, because there's only a percentage of players that get drafted in the USHL that actually make the roster. And that's the biggest misconception, is that you are going to be on the team if you get drafted.
Yep. I think there's a
I
lot
thought you were
of
going to stop right there with yep. I was going to say, well, you didn't leave me hanging. I left it to you. You go, yep. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I think it's important for people to know that every year there's multiple kids that go to main camps as free agents and end up making that team. When you look, if people went through like you do, when you kind of put these videos out and things like that, and you analyze the draft, let's just stay within the NA, but the USHL draft just happened, so you could use that as well. In many cases, some of the kids that are being drafted right now on those teams or in the NA, they're hedging their bets. These programs are thinking like, oh, this kid's playing in the BC League, but he's American. Maybe I can get him to come and play on my team. Or in the NA, maybe there's a kid that is in the USHL but didn't play a whole lot of games, or maybe was a drafted USHL kid, but he was drafted in, say, the 15th round or whatever. He may not make the team, so I'm going to hedge my bets and think, well, if he doesn't make the team, we have his rights and he can come to us. Well, if that kid makes the team and he doesn't come back to you, you don't have that asset anymore. So now maybe a free agent kid comes in and makes it because of that. To your point, there's kids that have been tendered, and we see it all the time. A kid that gets tendered right away in November has December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, finally get to main camp. If they weren't putting in the same amount of work or developing throughout that whole, 6, 7, 8 months or whatever, they can get passed up by a lot of kids. So these teams will tender kids that they project that this is a player we want for our team. But if he shows up and he looks like he hasn't put in any work, or for whatever reason he plateaued and didn't get any better, the team's not going to stick with that kid if it's that far off between where he's at and another player.
And that's you hit it too, because and Liz, I see your question. We'll get to it next here. One of the things that is very, very difficult for we're talking about kids 16 and up in age, 16 to 19 in this draft or tender process. It's hard. It's very hard if a kid gets tendered young, 17 years old, 16 years old, and they get tendered or they get drafted even, for them to keep their head on straight. It really is it sets them apart. They get media, media is subjective, but they get Twitter, they get Instagram, whatever, attention from it. And in their peer group of hockey players, they're special. And, in their family, they're special. They got drafted, they got tendered, So to keep that head on straight, a lot of times it's just a matter of they feel like they reached the pinnacle, but they're just taking the first step up that mountain. And it's very, very hard to teach kids that that's only a step in the process. And, you can't get too low if you don't get tendered or drafted, and you can't get too high if you are tendered and drafted, because there's other guys out there that don't get tendered or drafted. They're going to step right over you because they kept working all year long. And it's so difficult. It's so mentally difficult to stay, right on that, locked in on that focused, that elevator up, and without it going up and down, up and down, up and down. And, we see it all the time. It's just one of those things that mentally it's tough, very tough. Let's jump into Liz's question here. It says, so with all the things that coaches are doing, if a player has reached out to them, how long in general should he wait until they follow up if they don't hear back? Oh, very good question. Mike, what do you think?
I think every program's different. The way the coach kind of manages these types of requests. Sometimes, a coach will kick it over to their staff, and their staff should be able to answer that question within a day or two. So 48 hours, I would say at the most. If you don't hear back after a week, then I would probably reach back out. But I would also just kind of look at maybe what that team is doing. Like if they're still in the playoffs and, they're still playing, like that is not what's on the mind of that team and that staff. So you might not hear back. If it's a team that's been done and obviously they're still scouting and recruiting and things like that, but an email that comes across, they should be able to respond to fairly quickly. So I would just kind of put it out there where if you don't hear anything for, at least a week and that team is at this point done and they're not playing, I would follow back up in another week.
I agree. You know, don't forget about that recovery period. Some teams get knocked out of the playoffs and they literally shut down for a week or two. Everybody just takes a break. Maybe the coach goes out on his boat. Maybe they go golfing. A lot of teams, the coaching staff live in other cities, other states. Maybe they go back and visit their family, especially assistant coaches. Assistant coaches, there's a large percentage that just live in the city they're coaching in for the season. So there's some downtime. Keep that in mind too. But, in general, you give it a week or two and you reach out again. And, make sure too, this is the important part. Jump on to the team webpage and make sure that you're hitting their scouts, you're hitting their director, you're hitting the assistant coach, the general manager, and the coach, because you don't know who's taking the lead for the pre-draft camp. You don't know who's taking the lead for the main camp. Some teams, the main camp is all done by a general manager, or the front office staff sets it all up, and the coaches just give a little bit of input. Other ones, the coach does all of the things. Other ones, the scouting department or the player development guys get involved, or the directors get involved. So every program's a little different. So make sure you're spanning across the globe of that team to their emails. Now, I say that and I regret saying it right away because, I I don't want extra emails. I really don't. I get enough emails already. So if you're looking at our program, just email Bloomer. That's all you have to do. Go straight to him. He'll handle everything.
That turnaround time is minutes, not days.
Well, when you don't have any friends and your wife's already figured out that, it's just best to leave you in the basement and, bring you up for dinner, that's about it. So I get it,
I'm okay with that.
You got a condo. You got a basement in that place?
Yeah. Yep.
Finished?
Yeah. That's where the man cave's at.
Well, good for you. You must be there now because nobody would have that Detroit monstrosity up in any other room but a man cave.
This is my office. I'm upstairs.
Oh boy.
This is for you. This is for the viewers.
For the viewers. you put that up just for the viewers, just to
all 12 of us. This is for all of us.
Yeah. Well, we got a decent group going right now. So anyway, recovery. There's from a player's perspective, junior players have long seasons. If you're already at that junior level, you understand this. But if you're not at the junior level yet, junior players start in late August. Well, main camp's in July. Then they take a few weeks. Then they come back in, mid to late August, depending on what program it is. And then they're going until, almost June if they make it all the way through. And in fact, some years it actually goes into June when they finish. That's a long, long year. That's a long year. If I got to take my shoes off to count how many years or months that is, but I'm thinking that's like a 9 or 10 month period of time there. They need time to just get away from everything. They need time to, some players come in and if they were at 200 pounds, they're down to 185 because of the year. And they can't eat enough during the season. They can't keep the calorie count up, and they lose weight, and they look like they've been on a crash diet for the last year. Let them eat, let them sleep, let them just get that body feeling comfortable again. I know that there's junior players that I've dealt with for years in my own family, but also kids that I've worked with private lessons. Hey, look. You don't need to get back on the skates for a week or 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks because you just got to get your body back and let everything, you got to want to get back on the ice. And if you're at 185 and you're used to being at 200, boy, oh boy, it's tough until you get that feeling back. And part of it is just letting your body recover. If you're not there yet, I look at this differently. If you're a 16, 17, or 18-year-old looking to get into juniors, and you've got this period of time here when your season ended, your U18 season. U18s for some kids ended, a month ago? month and a half ago. It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a prime time to get both done. Hey, take vacation time with your family. Play a spring sport. Sign up to play 3-on-3 or sign up to play in a golf league or whatever you want to do. But man, oh man, get on the ice a few times a week. Keep it going. Learn to lift like a professional athlete lifts. That's the biggest thing I could tell you if you're not at juniors yet, because I shouldn't say every team, many teams, most teams, the majority of teams have qualified people and they expect you to be able to lift the way a professional athlete lifts. So you need to know all your Olympic lifts. It's just not a bench press and get on the bicycle and ride it for 30 minutes and leave the gym. That's not junior hockey. You need to know your lunges, your plyometrics, the Olympic lifts, all those things. So if you haven't worked with a trainer before, now's the time. Jump in before juniors start for you and use this recovery time for other people as a way to get the advantage of understanding how to do this stuff, because you're going to be asked to do it right away. As soon as you get to main camp, there's teams that will actually put you through the workouts every day at main camp. I know 2 teams in the NOL that do that. It could be 20 teams in the NOL. I just know of 2. And then as soon as August comes around, you're going to be lifting every day, until the season starts, and then it'll lessen, but it'll still be there driving away. So, yeah, you got anything to add to that, Mike?
Well, I would just say one of the elements of the wear and tear on your body and the recovery portion that I think is always overlooked, especially from people who haven't played before or played juniors or college or anything, is just the wear and tear of the travel. Being scrunched on a bus, taking 2-hour, 3-hour bus trips, periodically through each month. Especially if you're playing juniors, you're not staying in 5-star hotels. So that the bed you're sleeping in, and sometimes you're sharing with another teammate, it's just all of that adds up. If you did it for one weekend, there'd be no issue. The fact that you're doing it at least twice a month, or depending on your schedule, it could be three weekends out of the month that you're on the road traveling and things like that. That adds to the wear and tear that their bodies are experiencing on the ice and working out and everything else. So when they get a chance to hit the reset button in the off season, it's real important that they do that. And it might only be for 2 weeks. It may only be for 1 week. The player will they at some point will have to understand their body to know when is the right time to hit the reset button and how long does that reset need to take. And then to your point, then you got to get in and you got to build. Like the off season is your opportunity to not return next year where you left off the previous year, but to be better and to take that next step, because your team is expecting you to take a step. If you had 15 points this year, you need to get at least 25, 30, 40 points next year. 15 points again another for the next season is not good. Let's put it that way. You need to take a step. And all these kids are trying to get to college. If you're going to play juniors, your goal is to get to college. So you have to be even better. So then all of a sudden they take notice, or maybe they did take notice and they want to see you take that step.
Yeah.
If you don't take that step,
if you're first year in the NOL, or the first year in the USHL or the NCDC, or the NA3 or whatever league we're talking about here, if your first year you're at 150 pounds, this is the time you get back into it and you put the weight on. You learn to lift and you grow your body. Because 150 for 2 or 3 more years of junior hockey ain't going to cut it. You got to get that weight on so you can actually play the game the best you can. And that's where the confidence comes from. If I was 150 when I came in, I was getting bounced around a little bit, or even if I wasn't, but I had to, always have my head on a swivel, waiting for somebody to take my head off. I come back and I'm 165. Maybe the next year I'm 172. Now all of a sudden you're filling out, you get much more confidence because you got much more strength. You're a little faster, you're stronger, you can push people off. It makes life a lot easier when you get that lift. And we got another follow-up. So Liz asked, what can you do for mental recovery for players in the off season? What do you think, Mike?
I would say getting away from the game, getting away from hockey completely. If you're hitting that reset button and it's for 2 weeks, I would not even pick up a stick or even start going down that path. Just completely get away. If there's like you brought up a good suggestion of like picking up golf, or a lot of kids like to go fishing depending on what the weather's like when you hit that reset button. But just something where you're completely shutting it off. Don't worry about if I didn't get enough ice time, or what team should I play for next year, whatever. Just kind of block that out of your mind, get refocused, so that way you're not dragging some of the baggage that you left with into your off season and
Yeah,
into next season.
yeah.
You got to flush that.
There are people that are professionals that do mental training for athletes, and some of them are extremely good. And I've got relationships with a few of them, and I've personally worked with a couple of them over the years. What I would say, beyond just what you said, Mike, which was spot on, that was a great answer, is look for, as a parent, look for the twinkle in the eye. If all their buddies are playing in a 3-on-3 league once a week and are having fun and they're excited about it, that's a release. That's a pressure off. Let them play a little hockey. That's not a bad thing, because it's not. There's no drills going on. There's no, it's just buddies having fun. Vacations. We also use that time, this time of year, with my kids, to go visit colleges and get them excited about looking at campuses, and always trying to tie it in with something else, like, hey, we'll go to Vermont and we'll camp and we'll go see the University of Vermont, or we'll head up to Lake Placid and then cut across over to Vermont, or something. So that was always tied into something that was family fun, or at least a couple of the family members having some fun with going to visit some colleges. So there's many ways to do it. I think family vacation's huge. That spring break is huge. I think that in the summer, getting some kind of vacation, even if it's 4 days, 3 days, but something special, that you can see the release and the stress come right out of a hockey player's body when they're on a nice sandy beach and they're enjoying themselves a little bit. Especially when those teeny weeny 18-year-old girls with their bikinis walk by, and you watch all the players start jumping up and flexing and playing volleyball and trying to look like that maverick on the beach from Top Gun, which we all were there. Some of us, those days will probably never come back, but that's part of life.
Right there with you.
Very good question on that. Hey, look, we don't have any questions. If you got a question, throw it out real quick, because hey, we've already went on this for 40 minutes, and I think the bottom line is, we're still in game mode for a few more weeks, maybe a month and a half. Well, we go through mid-June, and then it's not as stressful until July, and so we'll get some breathing time there. But right now, the junior teams are still at it. They're at it hard. Strong staffs and strong programs are. I'm not saying every program is. And that's another thing, too. If you're reaching out to junior teams, if you're looking for a Tier 3 team and they're not responding this time of year, maybe they just don't put an effort into recruiting. Maybe that should tell you something about the program. I'm not saying across the board that's the answer, but, weigh all factors. Absorb all the information that's coming back to you, and receive all the messages that are there, and make sure you make good choices when you're picking your teams this year. That's all I got tonight. Anything else, Mike?
I think we got another question that just rolled in.
Oh, I see it. Is this the how many kids?
Yep.
How many kids are traditionally invited to main camps for the null? So that goes team to team. There is no traditional answer. I would say that, for main camp, 6 to 8 teams of players. So, do your math. Six times 20 is 120 players. 120 to 150 is probably the number you're going to see with a lot of programs. There are some teams that will go, or some programs that go less. They'll go with 6 teams or even 4 teams. In all current teams right now, of what we got, 30 or 31 teams now, they're all over the board. There are teams that will run 4 teams in main camp. There are teams that will run 6 teams. They'll run 8. I don't think you see too many run 10. But Mike, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I'll just say that this is a great question, but it also is something that really bothers me about how a lot of these programs are spinning their main camps, because I don't think it's a secret if, we throw out the term pre-draft camp, most people and players are going to say, oh, no, not doing any of those. I'm only doing main camps. I'm not doing any pre draft. Those are all money grabs. Well, a lot of these teams got smart. And what they do now is they have a main camp that lasts for a week. And it really starts off like a pre draft camp.
And they
And then
whittle
they
down.
basically
Yep.
filter it down until it's the legit main camp. So all these kids are turning down pre-draft opportunities because nope, I got a main camp invite. Nope, I got a main
Yeah.
camp invite. And I'm like, that's not a main camp. Like you'll see. Just because it's called a main camp doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's truly what you're wanting to expect.
I remember being at Muskegon a few years ago, and I think the first 3 days was like a pre-draft. There was, a lot of 15 and 16-year-old kids out there that were from good quality programs, but they were young, and they clearly weren't going to be rostered players. And then they trimmed down to their all-star games. Then after the all-star game, they selected players that move on, and then the veterans came in. So the veterans didn't even get on the ice till like the third or fourth day.
Right.
And
Yeah, they don't want their vets playing for 6 straight days and 6 games and in that amount of time or whatnot. But there are kids that started at the very beginning and ended up making it to like the real main camp. And it's like those kids are on their 6th game. Like they're not going to be able to perform well. So I get so upset with the narratives that constantly get spun out there, but it's not, when I'm on the phone with a family, it's not up to me to say, that's not really a main camp that you're going to. I just kind of let them go.
And I fully agree with you. But the same intention is there. You and I don't like that style of camp. We'd rather see it broken down into pre-draft, where it's truly pre-draft. Pick out and select the players that you want to move on, because we run a pre-draft. We got one coming up in a couple of weeks, and that pre-draft will probably have 15 kids that move on, 20. I don't know what the number is from the years past, and there'll be
30.
kids that are offered spots.
30.
You think it's that much?
Yeah.
So, but the bottom line is, in those kids of that group, there'll be kids that actually get an opportunity to play on the team, and it's really what we use it for. The term that bothers me is money grab. I don't believe that the majority that these are money grabs. Are there teams out there that are money grabs? Absolutely. Just like there are hockey stick companies that are money grabs. They charge you $400 and the quality is not there. Okay, hockey rinks that overcharge for the quality of their ice. There are so many different things where you can say, well, that's a money grab. Okay, yes, they exist, but for the most part, everything is there. There's a legitimate purpose for it. And let's not forget another side of this quote unquote money grab side. Every dollar that comes in, is highly taxed by the cost of the ice, cost of the staff, cost of the medical, cost of the insurance, cost of the travel. All those things get factored in. So people go, well, that camp, they brought in $60,000. Okay, 48 of it went to ice, or and I'm making this up. I'm just throwing numbers out there. But people forget that, if in our situation, the full-time staff, the coaches, the trainers, the medical people, they show up and they're working for the whole week. Well, that's salary. Okay, there's people back in the main office that are salaried employees that are just focused on that main camp, or on that pre-draft, or even the main camp. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes money that people don't ever factor into these camps, and that disappoints me, because I truly believe in the positive on these much more than the negative. Are there negatives out there? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's negatives, but that's not the norm, in my opinion.
I think I completely understand when people get frustrated and they call those types of camps a money grab when they go to the camp and there's not good players at the camp. And then it looks like, well, this was all a waste of money for them, which I agree. It is a waste of money for you. But the programs themselves, regardless if they have the best camp in all of their league for their pre-draft or the worst, neither of those programs are making money off of it because of how high the costs are to like rent all that ice and or to buy all that ice and to fly all their staff in and the hotels and the jerseys and everything else that goes along with that. So I get it. If I had a kid that I brought to a camp and it's like none of these kids are North American League players, they're high school kids, whatever else, then I would think like this is a waste of my money. I completely understand that. But the money grab portion of it, of these teams are making money off it, is totally inaccurate.
I kind of looked at it differently when my kids were playing, and I still look at it differently. And I understand that point of view from parents, and I understand exactly what you're saying, Mike, and that's probably the majority of them. But if my kids went to a camp, or a pre-draft, or even a main camp, and they were on the top 5% or the top 10%, I was like, well, good. There's less that the coaches have to look at, and I was like, this is actually good for us. It was easy to pick out who the players were right away, and I was like, hey, good for them. They're going to get more looks. They're going to get they're going to shine more. And so I never looked at the negative side of it. I always looked at the positive side, even if it was a horrible, level of talent. And now, did my kids look at it the way I do? No, they look at it the way you just described, Mike. And I understand that. They're like, there's no competition here. This sucks. And I would always come back with, hey, look at the positive. They know who you are. You're sticking out. You're standing out. And right. So I think that's important. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anything else we should cover?
Not that I can think of. Any other questions roll in?
Nope. I think we covered the questions, and I appreciate it. The audience actually grew, and it's actually really growing now as we're wrapping up the conversation. So, hey, look, we're going to be back next week, and we'll do it again. And you can always get on the junior hockey discussion. You can always go to YouTube and go to Junior Hockey Live and leave your comments there and questions there. You can DM either one of us, and we'd be glad to, put you on the docket for the questions. I can tell you, I honestly, now that these groups are growing so big, I try to clump the questions together. Some I can answer directly, but a lot of them I just answer by doing what we do, by talking live here. So I thank you all for watching us. Hey, and don't forget, Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, go there. You want to know more about the USHL and the percentages of players that move on to the USHL and don't make it? Go grab our videos on the USHL. You want to know how the NOL works? You want to know how the actual financials work on a junior team? We've got a video out there too on financials. You want to make a choice between U18 and Tier 3 juniors? We got videos on that too. You can jump in and watch it all. You can always go. There's 2 YouTube channels, Junior Hockey Advisor and Junior Hockey Live. Please go, sign up, subscribe, hit the like button, do all that stuff that you're supposed to do and help us grow this. And you can always go to our Facebook pages too. And many of you are already there. Enjoy the content and ask questions. If you don't see what you want, ask questions. If you don't see what you want, make that comment. Let us know what you need, and we'll try to build some content for you. So thank you so much. Mike, great job tonight. Appreciate everything you do for the program. And we'll see everybody next week.
Sounds good. Take care, everyone.